Welcome to another deep dive, where we take a close look at some thought-provoking source material. And today we're really excited to jump into Dexter Dias's 10 Types of Human.
Yeah, it's a pretty fascinating look at the forces that shape our behavior. That whole nature versus nurture thing.
Right, and I have to admit, when I first started reading this, I was blown away by how Dias blends these real-life stories with history and cutting-edge science.
He even throws in some pretty intriguing thought experiments to really make you think.
Definitely. So let's start with the basics. I mean, the book kind of challenges this traditional idea that the brain is like this general-purpose computer, right?
Exactly. Dias introduces this concept called brain modularity.
Brain modularity.
Yeah, it's like saying our brains are more like a collection of specialized modules, each one evolved to tackle specific challenges we face throughout human history.
Okay, so not like a general computer, but more like,
More like a Swiss Army knife. Think of it that way. Each tool perfectly designed for a specific purpose.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So how does this Swiss Army brain actually play out in real life?
Well, Dias starts with this really powerful story about a young boy named Michael who was tragically enslaved and forced to work on Lake Volta in Ghana.
Oh, gosh.
And ultimately he drowns, and Dias uses this heartbreaking event to introduce the first type, the Kinsmen.
The Kinsmen.
It's that primal instinct we have to protect those closest to us, our kin.
I can see that. It's like that almost automatic reaction some parents have to jump in front of a car to save their child.
Precisely. It's like a deeply ingrained protective mechanism.
Oh.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Dias contrasts Michael's story with another boy, Anthony, who also witnessed the drowning.
Okay.
And Anthony's reaction, or rather lack of reaction, reveals this phenomenon called psychic numbing.
Psychic numbing.
It's like, imagine you see a news report about a massive earthquake on the other side of the world. Do you feel the same urge to help as you would if it happened in your own city?
Probably not. I
Nah.
guess it feels more distant somehow.
Exactly. That's psychic numbing. Our empathy has limits, especially when we're confronted with suffering that feels far removed from our own lives.
I get it, but it's still kind of disturbing. Makes you wonder if we're all a bit heartless deep down.
No, it's not about being heartless. It's about understanding that our capacity for empathy isn't limitless. Dias even presents this thought experiment. Would you donate to a local charity helping one child, or a Romanian charity helping two?
Okay, interesting.
And research shows most people are more inclined to support the single child closer to home. Proximity and familiarity, they really influence our actions.
Wow. It makes sense, but it's still kind of unsettling.
It is. It really challenges our assumptions about empathy. But what about that part of us that does connect with the pain of others, even strangers?
Right. Is there like a specific part of the brain that allows us to do that?
Dias introduces us to patient,
Yeah.
a blind man, who could somehow accurately perceive the emotions of others even though he couldn't see.
Wait, hold on. So even though he was blind, he could still tell if someone was happy or sad?
Exactly. It's called blind sight, and it's pretty remarkable.
That's incredible. How is that even possible?
Well, patient A's blind sight suggests the existence of the second type, the perceiver of pain.
Perceiver of pain.
It's a mechanism within our brain, specifically in a region called the amygdala, that allows us to understand and respond to the suffering of others.
So even without seeing it, our brains are still wired to detect emotional distress. It's like we have this built-in radar for pain.
Precisely. But as we've seen with psychic numbing, this radar can be both sensitive and selective.
Right. So sometimes we pick up on those signals and sometimes we tune them out.
Exactly.
Wow. Okay. So from pain, Dias shifts gears a bit and takes us into the realm of social dynamics, starting with this guy, Sri Dasari, a contestant on Big Brother, who went through some pretty intense ostracism.
Yeah, Dasara's experience really highlights the psychological toll of social rejection, and it connects to this ancient practice of ostracism, which has been around for centuries.
Really?
They even used to have these broken pottery shards called ostraka to vote people out of their communities in ancient Greece. That's actually where the word ostracism comes from.
Wow. So this fear of being cast out, it's like embedded in our history.
Absolutely. Then Dias introduces us to Dawn Fazey Webster, a woman with locked-in syndrome.
For those who haven't heard of it, locked-in syndrome is basically...
Yeah, it's where someone is fully conscious but can't move or speak except maybe through slight eye movements.
It's a terrifying thought.
It is. But Dawn's story shows us how resilient the human spirit can be. Even though she's trapped inside her own body, she finds meaning and connection.
It's incredible. So on one hand, you have Dasari facing the terror of social isolation, and on the other hand, you have Dawn confronting the terror of physical imprisonment.
And this brings us to the third type, the tamer of terror.
the tamer of terror.
It's that part of us that helps us manage our fear of death, whether it's through everyday distractions, seeking out comfort, or creating these grand narratives to give our lives meaning.
So basically, the tamer of terror is why I binge watch Netflix when I'm stressed.
Haha, you could say that.
Interesting. So from terror, we move on to groups and belonging. And Dias uses this woman, Kathy Bolkovac, as a powerful example.
Right. Kathy was a UN investigator who uncovered a sex trafficking ring in Bosnia.
Oh, gosh.
And when she tried to expose the perpetrators, many of whom were fellow UN personnel, she was ostracized for breaking ranks.
That's awful.
It really highlights the power and the danger of group affiliation, and it introduces the fourth and fifth types, the tribalist and the ostracizer.
Break those down for me.
The tribalist is that innate instinct to form bonds and identify with a group.
Oh.
It's about belonging and safety in numbers. The ostracizer, on the other hand, is the enforcer. It's the mechanism that maintains those group boundaries through exclusion and punishment.
So we're hardwired to seek acceptance, but that same drive can lead to some pretty messed up behavior.
Exactly. It's like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
IS even talks about this psychological experiment called cyberball, where people are excluded from a simple virtual ball-tossing game.
I think I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Didn't they find that even being left out of something so trivial could cause real distress?
Precisely. It just shows how deeply ingrained these tribal instincts are.
Fascinating. From virtual ball games, Dias takes us to a very real conflict, the Central African Republic. He introduces Sarah, a young girl forced to become a soldier, and Patrice, a resourceful trader just trying to survive.
Their stories paint this really vivid picture of what happens when society breaks down, and it's here that we encounter the sixth type, the aggressor.
The aggressor.
It's the potential for violence that exists within all of us.
I mean, their experiences are really hard to hear about, but it does make you think about how easily our capacity for aggression can emerge.
Dias emphasizes that there are actually different types of aggression. There's reactive violence, which is more impulsive, and then there's instrumental violence, which is more planned and strategic.
So sometimes it's about lashing out, and sometimes it's about achieving a goal.
Exactly. And understanding these different forms of aggression is crucial if we want to address its root causes.
So from aggression, maybe we can shift gears a bit and go back to Sarah. Her story, while heartbreaking, also shows incredible resilience.
Absolutely. Sarah's journey is a testament to the human spirit's ability to endure trauma. Dias also talks about the impact of trauma on children, particularly the importance of attachment even to dysfunctional figures.
So even in the midst of chaos and violence, we still crave connection.
Right. It's like a fundamental human need. And then we meet Sabrina Avakian, an Italian judge who risked her own life to help displace people in the car.
She sounds amazing.
Dias describes her as embodying this blend of determination and delight, finding meaning and purpose in a truly challenging environment.
It's inspiring to see someone choose compassion even in the darkest of places. Gives me hope for humanity.
It should. It's a powerful reminder that even amidst darkness, there are always those who shine a light.
So speaking of light, maybe we can turn our attention to Anna, a young woman struggling with the decision to give up her child for adoption.
Anna's story really resonated with me. Dias connects her experience to the historical practice of foundling wheels, places where unwanted infants could be anonymously abandoned.
Foundling wheels. Wow, I've never heard of those before.
It's a glimpse into the complexities surrounding unwanted children throughout history, and it highlights how the urge to care for vulnerable youth, the seventh type, the nurturer, hasn't always been straightforward.
It's a reminder that even the most basic instincts can be complicated by societal pressures and difficult circumstances.
Oh, exactly.
Okay, so let's go back to the tech car for a moment. Dias introduces Francois, a man who chooses to stay in the country, despite the escalating violence, all for love.
Francois' devotion to Marielle, even in the face of danger, speaks volumes about the eighth type, the romancer. It shows the incredible lengths we'll go to for connection and companionship.
It's a beautiful thing, really. But then we have Vesely, who risks his own safety to rescue Lena, a woman he barely knows, from human traffickers.
Vasily's actions illuminate the ninth type, the rescuer, and they bring up this age-old question of altruism. Why do we help others, even complete strangers sometimes, at great personal risk?
Yeah, that's a question philosophers have been debating for centuries.
Dias explores various theories like kin selection and reciprocal altruism, but he points out that they don't fully explain selfless acts like Vasily's.
So there's something more to it than just genetics or expecting something in return.
Absolutely. It seems to be this complex interplay of empathy, personal experience, and maybe even a sense of moral obligation.
It's like this deep-seated urge to help those in need, even when it doesn't benefit us directly.
It certainly challenges the idea that humans are always driven by self-interest.
Definitely. So finally, we come to the 10th and final type, the seeker. And Dias revisits Yuba the activist fighting against FGM, highlighting her tireless pursuit of knowledge and understanding.
Yuba's story perfectly embodies the seeker's drive to comprehend the world and our place in it. It's the same force that likely motivated Dias to write this book in the first place.
So in a way, we're all seekers driven by this innate curiosity.
Exactly. And that quest for understanding, that's what makes us human. It's important to remember recognizing these 10 types isn't about excusing harmful behaviors, it's about understanding the forces that drive them.
Right. So the more we know about these types, the better equipped we are to actually make a difference.
Exactly. Dias argues that understanding these types can help us grapple with some of the really tough ethical dilemmas we face.
Like his analysis of FGM is a really good example.
Yeah, he talks about how multiple types can actually be at play in perpetuating this practice.
It's like on one hand, you have the nurturer who wants to protect her child,
But then you have the tribalist facing pressure to conform to cultural norms.
and then the ostracizer looms in the background, threatening social exclusion for anyone who dares to question the status quo.
It's a perfect storm of competing instincts and societal pressures.
It's a tragic example of how deeply ingrained beliefs can override our better judgment.
And it underscores the importance of understanding the cultural context in which these types operate.
Right, we can't just impose our own values and the expectations we have to meet people where they are.
Exactly. But Dias does offer some hope. He suggests that the seeker within us that drive for understanding can be a powerful tool for change.
So by shedding light on these psychological mechanisms,
And by engaging with communities and promoting education.
we can empower individuals to make more informed choices.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here. Explored these 10 types, encountered some incredible stories and mind-bending science. What's the big takeaway for us, the listeners?
Well, I think Dias wants us to reflect on how these types might be playing out in our own lives.
It's like looking in a mirror and seeing our own instincts and motivations reflected back at us.
Exactly. And it can be uncomfortable at times, but it's also incredibly illuminating.
So instead of jumping to judgment,
We should strive for understanding.
because understanding is the first step toward compassion.
Absolutely.
One thing that really struck me was this idea of determination and delight, that even in the face of suffering, humans can find resilience and even joy.
That theme comes up again and again in the book. We see people finding meaning and purpose in the most challenging circumstances.
It's a testament to the human spirit's ability to not only survive, but to thrive. So as promised, here are the 10 key takeaways from our deep dive into Dexter Dias's 10 Types of Human game. These are the nuggets you'll want to carry with you.
Let's recap what we've learned.
Number 1, brain modularity. The idea that our brains are more like specialized toolkits than general-purpose computers.
A fascinating new way of looking at how our minds work.
Number 2, the Kinsmen. The drive to protect our loved ones, but also psychic numbing the limits of our empathy.
A reminder that compassion has its boundaries.
Number 3, the perceiver of pain. The mechanism that allows us to recognize and respond to suffering.
Remember patient A and his remarkable blind sight.
Number 4, the tamer of terror. Our ability to manage our fear of death, but also the terror of social exclusion.
We saw this play out in the contrasting experiences of Sri Dasari and Don Fazey Webster.
Number 5, the tribalist, our instinct to form groups, and the ostracizer, the enforcer of group boundaries.
The story of Kathy Balkovac in Bosnia really brought this to life.
Number 6, the aggressor, exploring the different types and motives behind violence.
From reactive to instrumental aggression takes many forms.
Number 7, the nurturer, the drive to care for children, but also the tough choices sometimes made in the face of hardship.
The historical practice of foundling wheels provided a stark reminder of those complexities.
Number 8, the romancer, the longing for connection and the lengths we'll go to for love and companionship.
Francois's decision to stay in the scar for Marielle spoke volumes about this drive.
Number 9, the rescuer is the impulse to help others, even strangers, at personal risk.
Vasily's heroic actions challenged our understanding of altruism.
And finally, number 10, the seeker, our innate drive to understand the world and our place in it.
The driving force behind learning and growth.
And that concludes our exploration of Dexter Dias's 10 Types of Human Times. We hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and given you some food for thought.
Remember, the journey of understanding ourselves and others is an ongoing one.
Until next time, keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep diving deep into the knowledge that truly matters. So we've talked about these 10 types, but there's this bigger question looming in the background, right?
You mean the whole nature versus nurture debate?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, how much of who we are is predetermined by our genes and how much is shaped by our experiences?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Dias doesn't pretend to have all the answers.
Right, so it's not like a simple either-or situation.
Not at all. It's more like this intricate dance between our innate predispositions and the environments that shape us.
Okay, so nature and nurture are both playing a role.
Absolutely.
So how do we actually apply this understanding of the 10 types to our own lives?
Well, Dias encourages us to become more aware of how these types might be influencing our thoughts, feelings, and actions.
So, like, taking a step back and observing ourselves.
Exactly. Are we acting on instinct? Or are our behaviors being shaped by past experiences, societal pressures, cultural norms?
Hmm. It's like taking inventory of our internal toolkit, right? Figuring out which tools we tend to use and how those tools have been shaped over time.
Precisely. And by becoming more aware of these influences, we can start to make more conscious choices.
So it's not about being controlled by our instincts or our past.
It's about recognizing those influences and then deciding how we want to respond.
That's pretty empowering. It means we have more agency than we might think.
Exactly. We're not just puppets of our genes or prisoners of our past.
We can choose how we want to show up in the world.
Absolutely.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive, packed with fascinating insights and thought-provoking ideas.
It really makes you look at human behavior in a whole new light.
Definitely. So for all our listeners out there, we encourage you to pick up Dexter Dias's 10 Types of Human and explore these concepts for yourselves.
It's a journey worth taking.
And remember, the quest to understand ourselves and each other, it's an ongoing process.
Keep seeking, keep exploring, and keep asking those tough questions.
Until next time, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the heart of what makes us human.